Welcome to Sports Geek, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals. And now, here's your host who is ordering new Sports Geek shoes, Sean Callanan.
Thanks, DJ Joel. Yes, my name is Sean Callanan. Welcome to episode 316 of the Sports Geek podcast. On this episode, I'm going to chat to Jessica Smith from Angel City FC. Thank you very much for listening and Happy New Year. Welcome to 2023. You might be listening to this on your favourite podcast player. You might be doing it on my favourite podcast player, Pocket Cast, or you might be listening to it at sportsgeekhq.com. Thank you to those who've left a review on Apple Podcasts, over 100 podcast reviews around the world. Really do appreciate it. If you're a new listener and you haven't left a review, it does help people find the podcast, especially since we relaunched just a couple of months ago. 2023, a new year. Here we are. Who would have thought we would have made it a couple of years ago? It looked a bit dicey there, but I want to know how you tackle the new year. Is it just another day? Is it just another turn of the page in your diary, or potentially in your new calendar if you're still using a paper one? Is it a time that you reflect and reset and set some goals for the year? It's summer here in Australia. It gets a little bit hot. I normally find myself in a cafe with a shady spot and look over the year, and I do the year-end review that Tim Ferriss actually, I tweeted about it, posted it over the New Year's break. It's one that he does where he looks back through his diary and the meetings he had, which ones were the positive ones, which ones were the negative ones, put them in a big old list and then start focusing on those positive ones for the new year. And it's a really good way to sort of get your mind back into remembering the people you caught up with and the people you want to catch up with again and the projects you want to work on. So that's a work in progress for me at the moment, going through that and then going through some of the goals for this year. And a lot of them revolve around the podcast. Didn't have the biggest of years in 2022, only 7 episodes, one of our lowest outputs since 2014, but it allows a lot of upside for this year. So thank you very much for all the listeners that have come back. Thank you very much for the podcast guests that have committed their time. But yeah, really looking forward to a big year in 2023. So if you just subscribed, thank you very much. If you've been here since the beginning, thank you very much as well. But here is my chat with Jess Smith from Angel City FC. Very happy to welcome Jessica Smith from the Angel City Football Club. Welcome to the podcast, Jess.
Thanks so much, Sean. Happy to be here.
First of all, it's a question I open up with most people. How did you get your start in the world of sports business?
How long is this podcast?
It's as long as we're interesting. It can go as long as we want. But I'm always interested in where people start because you are now head of revenue, and a lot of young grads come out and go, "That sounds an exciting job. I want to be there." But those first couple of steps aren't that glamorous, and you've got to make some inroads. So, how did you make your start?
Yeah, mine was through a minor league baseball team in my hometown back in upstate New York. So I was the first person in my family to go to college. With that came a lot of pride, but also a lot of ignorance to just what jobs were even available, let alone jobs in the entertainment industry coming from a small town. Yep. I began as a sports journalism major and was convinced I was going to be the next Linda Cohen on ESPN. Halfway through undergrad, I was like, man, writing is not as fun as I thought it was, and ended up taking an internship in my hometown to just understand the backside of making a sports property move, right? Yep. And from that moment, really fell in love with it. Was working unpaid at the time, 16-hour days, and figured if I was enjoying myself in that circumstance, that I had really found something that I wanted to continue to pursue. So from there led to another minor league baseball team in Southern California before eventually heading up to the Oakland A's and then stopping over in Columbus with the NHL team there.
So you're in that sales space for the Oakland A's, and you were there for a couple of years, and then like you said, you sort of made the move, sort of going through that corporate sales and selling tickets and the different means of that, which it is the lifeblood of sport, being able to sell. When people say, how do I get into sports? Well, if you can sell, that's a good start. But then did you making the move from ticket sales to that sponsorship corporate development piece, was that something you were looking to do? Is that something you tried to tackle as sort of move to the Columbus Blue Jackets?
Great question. Candidly, no. At the time,
Yep.
when I was in ticket sales with the Oakland A's, I was loving it. I had two incredible, mentors and bosses at the time, Brian DiTucci and Steve Finelli, that I truly loved working for. I was managing folks in my early 20s and looking to take on whatever that next step could be. That said, simultaneously, without really understanding what it meant, I was also creating these theme nights and then going over to the
Yep.
partnerships team and teaching them like, hey, you can actually sell this for incremental revenue, and like telling them I basically understood their side of the business and how it would benefit the company in a 360 manner to get that company support for marketing. It's not just a ticket sales initiative, but it's more than
Yep.
that. And when a position opened up in partnerships, the head of marketing at the time, Amy McEwen, was like, you have to apply for that. It's like, really? You think I should try to do that? But I have this like great management trajectory over here. You want me to just go sell? And the more I thought about it, for me, it's about thinking in 5 years and 10 years, like what experience do you need to go do the thing that you want to do? And the more I thought about having diverse experience between both partnerships and ticket sales, that's the dream, right? When you look at what I'm doing now, I have an innate
Yep.
understanding of being an entry level ticket salesperson that helps me manage ticketing in a really special way, as well as having the boots on the ground partnership opportunity as well. So taking both of those experiences and then really thinking through how do I get to management after that is what brought me to Columbus. So they had a position open at the time.
And so is that a shift going from MLB with the A's in the volume of games and the pressure of sales, and then to be still a lot of games in the NHL, but a different sport? Was there's a lot of people that jump from sport to sport and they go, oh no, you've got to know this sport. Was there a bit of a learning curve to understand the hockey fans and the hockey crowd and the partners coming into hockey?
Well, being from upstate New York, no. I basically
Yep.
grew up in winter for 6 months out of the year. So hockey was a really natural place for me. Columbus, maybe not so much given that I was a Sabres fan as a kid, but that said, quickly came around to it. I think the biggest shift for me was the seasons and the indoor versus outdoor, as granular as that sounds. But I was in baseball for a decade and you're just used to grinding, but you're outdoors during the summer and the spring and you have spring training. And then you shift to hockey and you have your summers off, which seems great, but then all of a sudden it's Thanksgiving and it's, the December holidays and you're like, you have a game on Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve, right? And the cadence was also weird for me to get used to, where baseball was like 7 days on, 7 days off for the homestands. Hockey was like Tuesday, Friday, Wednesday, Sunday, Monday, Thursday. And so you never really felt like you were in sync with something when it came to like a personal schedule. And then you tap in like any arena, multiple concerts, that we were working as well. So I actually felt like arena life was a little bit more of a scheduling, grueling piece, but that may just be my personal perspective.
Yep. And then you keep making this East Coast, West Coast swap. You came back to the West Coast to a new sport, to MLS with the San Jose Earthquakes as a VP of sponsorship. What drew you back to West Coast and to another sport like football?
I mean, I shouldn't say the weather, but I won't say that didn't have a small factor. Jared Shawley, who is now the president of the San Jose Earthquakes, he and I had known each other for many years. He was at the A's at one point, and I was chatting with him about, hey, I don't know when, but I'd like to come back west. And he had just taken on the COO role in San Jose. And he's like, you should come work for the Quakes. And candidly, at the time, I was hyper aware of MLS, obviously, and like what they were building and how they were building it. I had come from such traditional sport with Major League Baseball and National Hockey League and not any understanding, I was like, I red flagged it to him a bit of just like, hey, like this is going to be new to me. I know it's a total different product and demographic and how you're selling soccer. And he's like, no, but that's the point. I want like somebody to come in that like understands those things and to bring it into what we're building here at the Quake. So that was my entry point into the soccer world. And I've been here ever since and can't imagine being anywhere else.
And was the challenging piece going from being in those big four sports that are well known and traditional sports, and MLS being that challenger brand, being that fifth sport, but say, hey, we can be a big four sport. We're talking to a different audience. Was that something that was exciting moving into soccer, football, whatever? I mean, I don't know after that David Beckham ad, but I don't know what we're meant to be calling it. I mean, I joke because everyone, there's four codes of football here, so you can't go wrong if you call it football. But yeah, right. moving into football, was that an exciting part, being a challenger brand without some of those, in some cases, century-old traditions?
Yeah, it was exciting, and I think it's really a personal preference, right? Like when you talk to folks that want to work in sports, it's often you have to find like what excites you. Like you really have to be bought into what it is because you're out there representing it every single day and then some. And for me, the really fun part about that is I think about coming from the minor leagues and a little bit of that grit that it takes, right, in the education piece.
Yep.
However, the beauty of moving into soccer and knowing what it was, even from being in the other big leagues, is I mean, basketball and soccer are undeniable when it comes to this next generation, right?
Yep.
And we've all known the data behind it for the last decade. So to be
Yep.
able to come into the sport and understand that you're right, the ratings and the numbers may not be competitive yet, but you know the pipeline is coming and you know what you're building in a really unique way, to me was more intriguing as somebody like on the work side because you feel like
Yep.
you're a part of actually like building, you know, what that's going to look like and feel like to consumers and how brands can be a part of that and so forth. So that's more intriguing to me, you know, always, if you obviously think about where I've jumped to, is having the influence to make something what it is today versus an institution that is certainly successful in a variety of ways, like, you know, the NFL and National Hockey League, but, you know, they are who they are, right? And
Yep.
and having the opportunity to individually add to that is rare.
Yeah, I mean, especially in the US, you know, football is the reverse of all the other sports. All the other sports are reaching their maximum domestically and now looking internationally for growth. We see the NBA doing it, we see the NFL doing it, but football's the other way. It is, you know, and we're seeing it now. The World Cup's happening right now. It is the world game. Everyone plays it. It draws in all the eyes. And it's the model is flipped in the US to sort of go, hey, you're now consuming the World Cup, you're now consuming the Premier League. Oh, this is the sport on your doorstep, and you can get that same feel and vibe.
Exactly. And you see it catering to communities that have wanted it for a long time. Like you look at California alone, just the number of youth players here, right? And to not have a professional team and to be able to build that with the community that's been following the sport internationally for so long and with the national teams, you know, is great because it should be different, right? It's a different audience. It is a different demographic than global soccer. So what are you doing to mend both of those things together?
So moving to your current role, Angel City FC, an expansion franchise, how did you find your way to Angel City FC? Because it was very much, you know, in startup mode. How did you find your way to Angel City FC?
It's a really funny story, actually. So I had a random LinkedIn message from Julie Ehrman, who's one of our founders and now president. And it just said, hey, you know, I have an idea I want to run past you. Can you give me a call? And I remember looking at her profile and she came from tech and different non-sports entertainment. Yeah. And it was like, we have no mutual connections. I have no idea what this woman thinks I can help her with, but I'm going to give her my cell phone number anyways, because, you know, that's what people do. Don't tell my mom, right? Just the stranger piece. It's like, hey, call my cell phone. Here's my very long, you know, windows of commute time, you know, here in California. And so I get on the phone and she said, hey, my name's Julie, you know, listen, I got your name from Brian Weinstein, who's actually one of our investors at this point. He works with Bad Robot. He had heard, and I didn't know Brian either, which is also funny. And just, you know, she's like, you know, I'm thinking about bringing a women's team to LA. And that's all she said. And candidly, our first conversation, you know, again, I had no idea what her intentions were, but I had just said, if you don't do this in the most incredible way and really make this a very big deal, like, please don't do it. Because in personally being passionate around the women's game, if LA doesn't show the world what's possible, it's going to be detrimental, actually, right? Because you're no longer going to have like investors looking at something a certain way, or even current institutions, you know, having the ability to scale based on an example. So we had a really constructive, but I gave her some honest opinions in that very first call. I was happening to be in Los Angeles a few weeks later. We grabbed coffee and she said, hey, it's Natalie Portman, when we were in person. And for me, you know, a pivotal moment for many women here in the US, especially when it comes to thinking about equity for pay and women in sports, is that Time's Up movement that happened. And you have that remembrance of the Natalie, the Jessica Chastain, the Uza. They're on the field, right? Like wearing the players' jerseys. They're holding signs that say Time's Up, pay up. And at that moment, there was this is not a athlete issue. This is not, right? This is a societal issue. Like us as women, And like certainly sports, showcase what our culture is at any
Yep.
given point. So it was just this moment that I think for so many of us in the industry and who have been athletes ourselves, it was seared in our brains that it felt like there was a wave of power finally paying attention to what has been happening for our lifetimes, right? So when she said that, I mean, my heart fluttered, I'm not going to lie, of just like
Yeah.
what could be possible. And from there, I really just, it was an idea for them at the time. I was early days of just call me if I can help with anything. Let me know what you're thinking, and we stayed in touch because that group had never done sports before. So like the most simple things of just, what's a sponsorship? Like, how do you actually get it? What does it cost to activate one? Right. Those moments were all fresh for them. So I, kept in touch, and I actually woke up, it was the middle of COVID, and I woke up out of a dead sleep and actually hammered out a business plan and sent it to her. And it had a lot of what we've ended up using today in it, of just like, I care about this project. Here's how you should build your team. Here's how I think you should put partnerships together. Here's how you can keep community at the forefront and be profitable. And we've been working together, lockstep ever since to what we have today.
Well, I did not expect that story. So that's true, because I had a question here about Julie coming from that non-sports background, from that entertainment background, and how that was a different perspective. Like how much do you think, like coming from it totally new, like not being in sport, gave, I guess, that blank canvas? Was it a bit that entertainment background where she sort of said, here you go, Jess, here's the canvas, can you please paint and tell me what I need here?
Yeah, I think, being able to do this together has been the smartest, like most, profitable way we could have, because I come from understanding the institutions, having worked in 4 of the major professional leagues, and being able to say, here's how hockey values this, here's how MLS is approaching this, just from a sales and marketing standpoint, coming in and knowing in the market what people are getting for revenues, right? And like being able to benchmark yourself towards that. And then Julie comes from just a completely different mindset of entrepreneurship, of like asking why all the time, right? Like, but why would we do it that way? And that's such an important question, because in sports, it's typically because it's been done that way before, and this is what they say, and there's
why
commercial
doesn't it get
guidelines.
asked enough in sport? Like it's because it is. It's like, oh, we did. That's how we've done it the last 20 years.
Totally. Exactly. So her instilling that mindset from day one to someone like me, who already had like a little bit of an inkling of that, like as a human being, like the challenging between like the knowledge I was able to bring from like a traditional sports sense and the knowledge she was able to bring and a network she was able to bring to the table to allow us to build this way was, a huge piece of why we found the success that we have. I think the funny part in thinking through taking the field for the first time, like, we're going back and forth. I'm like, we really need a head of operations. She's like, we have a head of operations. I'm like, no, like we need somebody that like makes credentials. And she's like, oh yeah. Like those small things when it came to game day, not just her, but like, so much of our organization has never worked in sports before. Again, like being one of our superpowers, certainly took some time with training this last 12 months, but the benefits of it are completely worth it, right? The mixture of getting some really big experts in here who have done this before, but ones that have an open mind to learning from and changing things based on folks coming from different industries has been wonderful.
Your Twitter bio and your LinkedIn bio, very consistent. You've got building a more equitable world through sport. How are you, and you mentioned that, sort of being one of the key drivers of Angel City. How are some of the ways that you're doing that with Angel City FC?
I mean, every way, to be honest. Existing is the first piece, right? So, we built Angel City, and, this came from the mind and heart of Julie Arman as she like put it together even before she was asking me how to build the traditional senses of things. And so, she built it as, this is going to be a sports team that can be a place where both mission and capital can coexist, right? And then she was able to define that through, well, what does that mean? It means, we have 3 pillars: equity, essentials, and education. Equity, of course, we're here to fight towards pay equity, but we can't just do that tomorrow. We also have to educate the world and how we're going to get there, right? So even as an organization, we can't pay our players more, and most consumers don't really understand how that works, right? With salary caps and so forth. So we need to educate that. And then we also need to talk directly to brands, to the league, to players, to consumers, right? Like, what is your piece of this puzzle to actually shift towards equity and pay equity? But equity for us is also ensuring that we create a more equitable world and playing field as often as we can. So supporting the Black community, people of color, the LGBTQ community, and so forth. Second pillar for us is essentials. And for Angel City, that began as, the essential of sport. So safe places to play, equipment for youth, it's transformative. And then you look at women specifically that sit in leadership positions. Almost all of them have a background of sport exposure and playing at some point in their lives. So very important work for us to do. However, we learned early on that one of the main reasons young women stop playing sports is they don't have access to a sports bra. So we really sat down and were devastated and thought, well, the word essentials has to mean more to us, right? So we now understand to build whole human beings. We're talking mental health. We're talking food security, housing security, and so forth. And then the third for us is education. So education is not just financial literacy programming and nutritional education. Those are really important in programs that we do, and candidly, sometimes in our locker room because our players haven't had access to things like that. But education is using our platform to talk about all the work that we're doing in the other two pillars as well, and not steering away from that. We believe abortion is a healthcare right. We aren't a sports team that's saying we're something for everybody. We know exactly who we are and what we're building. And we haven't seen much of that in sport to date. I'd argue, if any, as abruptly as we are, in carving that path. And so when I personally say I'm building a more equitable world through sport, Angel City's existence and heart of who we are is what's propelling that. And then we take that mindset in quite literally everything we do. Okay, well, how are we driving revenue and also creating more equity? How are we, taking these cultural issues that are important to us and also driving back towards not just talking the talk, but walking the walk? We don't want to be a soapbox, right? We don't want to be the folks that are pointing out all the things that are wrong in the world and not actually offering solutions beside them. So we're doing that on the daily, through every facet of Angel City. And I'm in turn, I'm doing that personally. I'm spending all of my time and energy. And it's an honor to do that, to have that ability to do that.
And being head of revenue, how do you and sometimes that revenue goal and those brand values and what there's aligned sometimes go in different directions. How do you anchor your revenue goals and revenue targets and what you're trying to do in sponsorship back to those core values to say that this is the type, if you're a sponsor of Angel City FC, you've got to be aligned and this is what we want. How do you balance that? Because that's obviously, in a tough sponsorship market, and we're seeing different sponsorship products that have been hitting the market, and sports have taken them on board, and they've fallen over and hurt a lot of people. How do you balance that? I guess that conundrum, or is it not a conundrum, and you're just really locked in on the values?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think there's two pieces to the answer. The first is valuation. And I was just speaking at ASPNW about this a few weeks ago. So first, before you go to market with any type of strategy, you need to understand what you're charging and why, right? Yep. So we went through the traditional valuation process as teams do. And you go out and you say, well, what should we be charging for our jersey sponsorship? Yep. How much overall revenue do you think we should have? And you can kind of back into assets and staff and what you can afford to make this thing go once you can sell things. Well, we got our valuation back. And it was awful, and this is me coming from men's sports traditionally, right? Where they're telling me that the front of our jersey is worth $1 million. And I'm coming from, Major League Soccer, where I know that number is bottom of the barrel, right? And I start thinking about it a little bit more intuitively, well, why is that the value? What's actually going into that? Right. And Natalie Portman's going to be wearing this jersey, among many others. But you're telling me that there's no value to that, or the number of jerseys we're going to sell is, dwarfing, again, many of what men's teams are selling. And I know that just from, being behind the scenes and having that knowledge, but you're telling me it's worth less. Right. So the number in the marketplace, the celebrities we have, and you're still telling me it's worth significantly less. And so we challenged that from the start. Because the evaluation process for us was most are you take the traditional women's sports usually get this much. Well, and you're going to be on LA, so you're going to get a lot. I'm but that's not a lot, because you're not bookmarking us against other actual properties that we should be, right? Given the factors that I outlined, so we went to market. We kind of scrapped that a bit. We worked with it, but we made them include some other valuations that were relevant, a lot being through our ownership group at the time, because there was actually like, a set thing we could point to. And we went to market with our 10% model, which,
Yep.
Folks are aware of now. But really what we did was, when we said we don't want to be a soapbox, and when we thought about these conversations we're going into with, partners, we wanted to go in and say, here's how we're going to change the world, and here's how I want you to do that with us. That was really important to us, versus just saying, look how great we are. I want to take all your money, and of course you're going to get like the shoulder effect to like being affiliated with us. But like, when you actually think about like what we've accomplished together, it was missing that layer. So that's valuation part one. Part two, is going to market and actually testing it, right? Because we were going out to market with not a firm valuation, because it didn't exist, and a story that was what I just said. And, we're here to change the world. I want you to be part of this with us. We are not going in someplace saying, I'd like you to take a look at how many radio media value pieces we're going to have, and our LED is going to be broadcast all over the globe. Not accurate, right? Like that.
Yep.
And that's actually not the strength of what they're buying. So we built something where, and we now talk about it the way that we say, you have to value your values, right? Because we innately understood at the beginning, from that valuation process to going to market, that there's a benefit for brands, of course, aligning with an organization like ours, right? Is it the number of impressions they're going to get from traditional men's sports? No. Not traditionally anyways, not through TV viewership, et cetera. It's getting there, but the number of games, like, you can dig into all the reasons why, right?
Yep.
But what there is a trust. And in today's market, number one, you have Gen Z, and they're not going to affiliate with anybody or anything that they're not morally aligned with, right?
Yep.
So if you're a brand, a sports team, an athlete, like, and they're not loyal. So like they, to a team, right? They are loyal to athletes too, right? So you just have to be innately aware of like that generation kind of like taking hold of the sports industry. The second piece that we really looked at, and what I call them, is a COVID consumer. Like the whole globe just went through something, and we were early days of that. We were building this whole thing out in the fall of 2020. And every single person I know, is now thinking about things differently. They know who they're spending their time with. They understand, the work and home balance that they're seeking to have. Balance is the wrong word, but I should say like differentiating of time. They're thinking about what brands and athletes, et cetera, that they're following. So that's worth something, that you can actually buy a product that shows consumers that you have the same values that product does. And we went to market with that. So I pitched our front of kit 40 times in 2 weeks. And I just told Julie, I was like, listen, we're going to go for this. And this is what our strategy is. The market will tell us very quickly if we're out of our minds.
Yep.
But I innately knew, from obviously having decades of work inside these same rooms with these same decision makers, knowing what they're looking for, seeing brands out there also seeking like, how are they going to start showing consumers, not just telling consumers that they have these values. And so we were able to go in and provide that, not only high visibility, not only the right thing to do by supporting women's sports, but also we're making actual change. So like with our 10%, model, you look at DoorDash, we're going to feed 1 million people in the course of our partnership, right? Like we sat back down for the recap. Like that's what we're doing. When you look at Birdie's, who's the sleeve partner on our jersey, we created an internship program for diverse high school students, because we believe even college is a barrier to entry for both sports and fashion, right? We're going to sit down and look at the alumnus of that group of humans who's had access to both of us and got out into the world. And so we now have 27 partners, and each one has a reason beside us for like making real change, on top of course, the incredible content we have, the followship, game day visibility, et cetera, that they're getting.
I mean, it is very much, there's a real shift in like that valuation piece, because that traditional model is, media buys. How many eyeballs am I getting? Where are those eyeballs?
Yep.
Who are those eyeballs? And it's effectively just a media valuation calculation and go, oh, here it is. It's like, well, you can just buy programmatic, or you can just buy, TV spots at NBC if you just want your brand there. But it's that attachment to, oh, I want to be associated with this. And it's not just, oh, successful. Like it's I want to be associated with the Lakers because they're a really big brand and a long history of being successful. It's like they want to be associated, partners like DoorDash want to be associated with your message, and then it becomes, your pitch becomes part, corporate social responsibility, what they want to do in the community. And so your sponsorship's not not traditional in that they can tick a few more boxes that they've got. Not to mention the social digital impact that you've got, where you've got a few levers there to be able to pull with your a large group of owners and influencers that say, hey, I'm supporting this cause, but I'm a part of the team. So it really is like the metrics and the valuation piece hasn't caught up with I guess that the pitch you're doing, but the pitch that more sponsorship folk are out there trying to do, to say, well, if I was just selling eyeballs, you could just go to Mr. Zuckerberg and buy eyeballs,
Exactly right. Yep. And a lot of the CMOs we talk to, that's what they say. They say the core of sponsorship is actually like alignment of values and marks and logo affiliation, right? That's why you do partnerships. So media, of course, is important, but it's not the same bucket necessarily of consideration. So it ends up becoming two different reasons that they're looking to buy. And we've actually taken, it's not just the partnership model with purpose. So we have a ticketing model with purpose as well, the fan fueled player fund, where 1% of net ticket proceeds actually go towards the players that help us sell tickets, right? So they're using their personal likeness on their accounts. And, we're able to say it's educating fans that you buying a ticket matters, right? So it's going back into that education of consumers of showing up matters, buying merchandise matters, supporting our partnerships matters. Like they all will push this forward in a big way.
So you're talking before, you've been doing a recap. Season 1, your first season has been done. Looking back, how did you assess season 1, both from a whole of team point of view, but then also with your head of revenue hat on?
Yeah, the assessment it's mixed, right? So the first assessment is prideful, right? What we set out to do and what we built, we did. Yep. And we say we're just getting started a lot, and we really are. Like in year 1, for us to have gone from me and Julie to now like a full staff and incredible content team and marketing team, there's some other folks that were in that early stage with us as well, Steph Rudnick and, who's on our PR front. But it's wild, like any startup, when you think through the fruition of like what's actually transpired in the last 12 months. So certainly prideful in what we've been able to build in the community that has shown up for us time and time again on all fronts. The other piece of it, though, candidly, is when we say we're just getting started, it's never been more apparent to me that there's so much more work to be done, right? Yep. We had to come out and be the best in the see it, be it, and like change perception and actually get people to turn and look and say, oh, so this is actually, number one, a really great investment from an investment standpoint. Yep. Number 2, if you build products this way that serve a market that has not been catered to, you're going to sell merchandise, you're going to sell tickets, you're going to have fellowship, you're going to have all those things. But it's also heavy because we're like the goal of equity, right, is still like we've got a lot of work to do. So like we can be the see it, be it, but we have so much more work to do. We have to sustain what we're building and grow it. We have to help other people behind us take this on and make sure that they're interpreting it and monetizing it their own way to make this thing go. We can't be the most successful women's team in the world that doesn't actually change anything, right? Yep. We need to be that, but then there needs to be 15 other ones like knocking on our door. We need transformative leagues and athletes to continue to get their dues and so forth. So we have our heads down, and a lot of work to do in front of us, but are certainly proud of what we've built to date.
And definitely, and from a ticketing front, to have 4 full stadiums at Bank of California Stadium, it's a beautiful stadium and co-tenants with LAFC. It would have been pretty special from your point of view to see that stadium full and loud and just the atmosphere it created.
Yeah, it was, and our average attendance was over 19,000 of a 22,000 person venue. Yep. So every game was really incredible. And then we had 4, obviously, that reached the max. Opening night, obviously a lot of nerves with that. I had so many different partners there. Obviously, the first time so many of our ticket holders were in the building. I've got a lot of staff and coworkers that have never worked a game before. So you're just stressed to the max on making sure all the promises you just made feel real in that moment. And then the whistle blew and we won 2-1. And I'm sitting there and I'm just in tears, because you're looking around. It just, it brings me back every time I talk about it. But again, over 20 partners, like there with their executives being like, this is it. This is exactly what we're doing. And like, we're changing the game together. You've got 22,000 fans and a full supporter section of 3,000 people just drumming and like screaming with flags and a tifo that's like incredibly memorable. And it feels surreal, that everybody showed up that way. But the stadium vibe, it's unbelievable. It's, when you're sitting at an Angel City game, it feels as though we're going to change the world. And I don't know any other place that I've ever felt that. You're surrounded by people that aren't like you, but that want the same things moving forward, and yet are also like there to have the best time and cheer for your team and boo the refs when it's appropriate and so forth. But it's really a vibe like no other that I've been a part of in this industry.
You've been in startup mode, and there has been a trend, especially with more startup and tech investors moving into the world of sports, to try to transform sports to be a bit more like a startup and be a bit more agile. Like when you're in an expansion team, and like you said, you can name your number when you started. There's a lot of, it forces collaboration because there's less of you. You're doing every single role. People are working across departments to get, the initial game days up. And so it works quite well. But you've also been part of the older style sports teams that end up having their departments. Those departments sometimes start drifting apart. How do you stop that happening and keep that collaboration that, works so well when you're a team of 40 and then a team of 100, you knew everybody? How do you keep that collaboration going as Angel City become more successful, more people, more boots on the ground, so to speak? How do you keep that collaboration tight and ongoing going forward?
That's such a great question, and one that we think about a lot. The first is culture, right? And hiring folks that get what we're building. If you're going to represent Angel City, it's not just being the best at your job. Like, you really have to have a want to be a part of what we're building, because you are that, whether you're talking to the business community, the media, like, you really have to personally embody what we're building and why we're building it. So keeping a culture of hiring people that are not only the best, but good humans, right? Like It's so important to us, to hire the right people that fit into this familial, yet, it feels like you're working with an all-star team. Like, every single person is so good at but everyone feels so deeply about getting it right and in doing that side by side. So hiring is a really big deal as you grow that quickly. And being honest with yourself at this point, as you're looking at it and being like, okay, do we have everybody doing the right roles for them and for this company's benefit, right? Like, it's okay to be honest in those situations as you're growing. That's the point of growth. It's painful sometimes, right? But you have to be honest in those situations to make sure you're curating what comes next for something that has hierarchy yet isn't hierarchical, if that makes any sense, right?
Yeah, it does.
You need obviously like more layered decision makers, absolutely. However, they can't be singular mindset decisions, because that's not the beauty of who Angel City is and how it was built. So it's no small feat from a management perspective to keep that. And I think the second piece is, it's exhausting to go through and build a startup that was successful. It's incredible. Yeah. So the understanding of what does burnout feel like, and also making sure we're keeping fresh perspectives in the rooms, right? Because there's a lot of just like, I can get this done. We need to make sure, like, the beauty of what brought Angel City to life to be successful was those differing opinions, differing backgrounds, asking people for help, that maybe have a different mindset to do it. We have to remind ourselves continuously to do that. We're fortunate to have some incredible owners, right? They're not all just the A-list and group of people that are so lovely that attend our games and, support us every step of the way. But we have some of the best tech venture folks in the world. And to just be able to have conversations with them about their business is so enlightening to how we can learn a little bit from them. They've all been through what we're going through in different ways, and we have a lot to learn and a lot of resource to pull from. So that's a great question to ask. It's, in my mind and in my heart every day as a leader in our company, to make sure that we're really doing it the right way.
Is there still that sense of, you said Julie came in and kept asking why? Do you feel like you still have to be, encouraging your staff, whether they're new or on, to go keep asking why? Because it's not like, hey, season one's done, we've got it. Like, this is our formula. We're like KFC, we've got the secret herbs and spices. You still have to keep asking why, to go, like, what's next? How do we do this better? How do we stay on mission? Is that sort of something at the core to sort of get people, whether they're coming in to say, why do we do that? Or this is how we do it, or here's how we can improve?
Yes. But I also think it's the next step of that is understanding where to put the power of the why, right? There are certain things that they're only going to be so good.
Yep.
Or you can only change so much, right? And you should certainly ask those, but know how much energy to put into, like, I'm trying to think of a good example like that would fit into that. But, like something that's like a set thing, right? Like, what's the walkway to get into the stadium? There's probably 5 options. So like, let's go through them all and decide which one it is and like move on. The power of the why comes from, okay, we're sitting at the league's table, right? They're making decisions. If we don't agree with something, we should be asking. Or if we're seeing something at the table that we think could be better or more profitable, and we know that because we are who we are and we have the resource that we do while others may not, we have to ask why and really challenge those rooms. If we're sitting with fans that are, sharing some, feedback with us that maybe we weren't expecting, we need to like ask ourselves why and really think through that and adapt to it, right? So I think the power of the why needs to stay, but not in a way where it's in every facet of the organization. Like some of the stuff, you're right, like check the box. We figured that out. Great. Like the granular stuff, like we have the relationships, you can continually evolve, of course, through the year over year stuff. Let's now use what we just used in all of that for this past year and take that and like figure out what else comes next, right? I think that's going to be the next challenge for us is how we continue to grow versus the continually improvement on the small stuff.
One thing we haven't touched on, and I love talking about all the business side of sport, but a lot of the times the business side of sport can be skewed by the operations and what happens on the field. How has, the coaching staff, the players, everyone that puts the product on the field, how have they fit in and aligned with, the same goals and are running the same path? And how do you keep those? How do you keep those two, going step for step, and staying aligned with what you're trying to do?
Yeah, that's so tough for every organization, right? Those that have ever worked in sport or have started to learn any more about the culture like of these incredible brands, but it's almost like you have 2 completely different offices, right? Because they do have 2 completely different goals. However, they're the same umbrella, right? So finding ways for the intersection of understanding why we're building this and how we're building it is the root of how we keep a close community, right? So our players that come in, they know who Angel City is. They know what we stand for. They know, it's our job to educate them on like what we're building and why we're building and how they can be a part of that if they'd like to off the field. That said, we want to win, too. Like the football culture for us, we have 14 former U.S. women's national team members in our ownership group. I mean, I don't want to look at Abby and Mia and Foudy and like not win a game, right? So we are hyper driven to, again, you want the right people, doing the job on the field too, but like you also need to create a level of excellence that we expect on both the business side and the on-field side. And we don't think those are exclusive, right? We think we can be great people changing the world and dedicated to our community and the best, and that's what we're going to do. We're getting better at that though. Like year one, there's a lot of, learnings that come with that. So Angela Hucles-Mangiano, she's our newly appointed general manager, former player herself, medalist, like unbelievable human being in every sense of the word. And she is really passionate around creating that culture in our company that way. Right. So her staff is busy putting together some ideas through summits where like we actually are going in and spending time and talking to them, like how we are today. Right.
Yep.
Often like the sponsorship question is a great question. Like you have some players that don't understand that have never had a personal endorsement, even like, what does that mean and how and why, and how can we help educate them and tell them where they can find resource if they need it. And certainly, we build unpaid appearances and including them in certain things like that too. So she's going to be incredible for us in making sure that culture is lockstep moving forward.
Terrific. Jess, I really do appreciate it. I want to move on to the Sports Geek Closing 5. I'm here with Jess Smith from Angel City FC. Do you remember the first sports event you ever attended?
Yes, the Auburn Double Days, the minor league baseball team that I ended up working for in my hometown, a 2,000-person stadium. At the time, a minor league team for the Astros. Then they went to the Blue Jays at one point and even in the Nationals at one point. But that I thought I may as well have been in a 40,000-person stadium. As a 5-6-year-old, it was unbelievable.
Terrific. And you would have been to a lot of sports events in your time. The food scene in sports has changed a lot over the past 15 to 20 years. Do you have a favourite food memory or a go-to food when you're at a sports event?
I always seek out whatever that venue and that place is known for, right? So it may not be consistent, but like in San Jose, when I was with the Quakes, we always had local food trucks lined up.
Yep.
So I would try a different one every game, just to get a vibe of what the city was. Obviously, LA has some incredible tacos. We have some of those inside the stadium. So those are one of my go-tos when I'm there. So I seek out the local fare, if you will.
Terrific. The signature dish of the stadium. It is pretty good, a good guide. What's the first app you open in the morning?
Oh man, reluctantly probably, but Slack, so
Okay.
I open my Slack channel. However, I have a personal and a work reason for it. I'm in kind of this support group's kind of the wrong thing, but accountability group with some different life goals that we have. So I do a daily check-in in the morning of like what I accomplished the next day and like kind of look at what everybody else did, gets me in the right mindset. But then I definitely scan really quick to make sure if I need it urgently on anything that it's there. Otherwise, I do put that down, but Slack is the first thing I do look at in the morning.
Do you think, especially it being in a team that started in a COVID environment, do you think Angel City FC sort of lent in and, Slack is a big part of that communication and collaboration because you would have started in this, lockdown, Zoom meetings, those kind of things. Do you think it was something that sort of actually helped you bring you together because you weren't doing it in an office in those initial days?
Yeah, like Julie and I had met in person the first year 3 times, right? And, here we are working sometimes 15, 16-hour days and like putting together all these like big strategy documents and talking about these big meetings we were having, never being together. It was all virtual. So we were all familiar with the space, but to go from day one and have that be the core of how we communicated made us really smart and agile, because as people came into that culture, that's like already what existed. It's like you move quickly, you communicate informally, you just progress over perfection, right? Just like keep moving forward. And I think that being on a Slack or similar type platform, that's a big piece of that.
It is amazing. 4 years ago, those types of things wouldn't have happened if you didn't book the boardroom and everyone was in there and, someone ordered muffins and there was a whiteboard and it's like, oh, no, we can do all of this. Like this whole, I can't do work from home and, there's probably a toddler jumping up and down and you're tapping away and dinner's getting ready and they're still getting things done. Like the amount of things that people have been able to juggle and be adaptable to, it's really transformed how people are working together. And I think, if we take some benefits of the last couple of years, I think that's definitely one of them.
Agreed. The productivity each day is astounding, truly.
Yeah. Are there people that, is there someone that you think the podcast listeners should follow? It might be someone you read or a colleague and why they should give them a follow?
I won't give a singular person, but I think it's important to know that your followership matters, right? And I try to educate people about this all the time. If you're going to say that you want women's sports and athletes to have equity, give them a follow, support what they're doing, their endorsements, what they're building with their own likeness. The power of the athlete is very real. And we have this opportunity that brought us to where we are today because they've proven their worth like through their own, followership there. So really think through who you're supporting and why on social media. It does matter in the valuations.
Definitely. And lastly, what social media platform is your MVP? And you can answer it yourself and then also from a Angel City FC point of view.
From a personal standpoint, Instagram, it's the quickest, easiest way sometimes for just quick hits, good reads or, authors that I follow, just like self-work that I'm doing. I really appreciate that platform. I don't think, it gets better than Twitter from a workspace for the time being, at least, and being able to curate your timeline.
We should timestamp that. We don't know. Like it is November 29 as recording. We don't know where Twitter will be when this actually gets published, but I completely agree with you there.
Yeah. The setup of it for work, I've used it from early days. I remember I was still in ticketing at the A's and my handle was Jessica at the A's. And I had started to like hawk tickets on there, set up group buys. And at one point when you had to actually have like a social media, policy, they came and they're like, hey, so like, we're actually going to not allow people to like represent us this way. I was like, but I've made thousands of dollars of sales off this platform, so I shifted it to what it is now to Jessica Shazam. But I've been on it for a long time, and I love following authors, publications, podcasts, athletes. It's a great spot. Like watching it or being on it during a sporting event.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's nothing about it. I'm like, oh, I missed that. And I pop right on. Like I want to see the replay of the goal. Like I really appreciate that platform.
And is there a platform that Angel City FC has either lent into or has brought in the most engagement, fandom, connection with the players? Is there a platform that's working the best for Angel City?
I mean, TikTok is the highest growth one for sure in real time, right? The players are using it. There's really high engagement levels. It's a lot of opportunity for natural, back and forth there. So that's like the new piece where don't sleep on it. It's probably like, right, like that really, is climbing pretty quickly. But both Instagram and Twitter are important for us. And it's something that, I'm personally passionate about. Our LinkedIn, we have a strategy there, right? Yep. So you're talking to the business community there. There's more and more athletes on that platform as well. But the reinforcement of what you're building and the different types of messaging still going on that platform from a company that allow your employees, your brands, et cetera, to share it. Very, very important. Not enough teams are doing that. Not enough properties are doing that.
I completely agree. I think LinkedIn continues to be underserved in the world of sport, both from like a team account. It's like you don't have to be putting up a goal update, but you're doing so much. So many good things in the community. You've got so many of your partners. That's where they are. That's where they want to brag about what they're doing. There's some easy low hanging fruit, but then also, you shared the story before. Someone randomly might send you a DM, and you might end up with your with a dream job. So it's a real opportunity. It's a nice place to wrap up. What is the best place for people to connect with you on the internet if they were to reach out and say, Jess, I listened to the podcast, really enjoyed it?
Yeah, both Twitter and Instagram, I have the same handle. Feel free, public accounts, Jessica Shazam. There are some photos of dogs and children, and right now some Christmas trees. So like, just be prepared for that. But some other good stuff, and certainly on LinkedIn, I'm fairly active on that platform and have been for a very long time. So it's / Jessica Scott, which is my maiden name. But I'm on LinkedIn as well.
Terrific. Well, I will tag you in the post and in the show notes. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast. I hope to be back in LA sometime soon, and hopefully I'll be in there at a time when Angel City are playing and hopefully catch a game sometime.
Yes, we'd love to have you, and hopefully I'll see you at Women's World Cup next year as well.
Definitely. Looking forward to the world of football coming, descending to Australia. We do love a world championship, so it should be good.
Great. Good to see you.
Why not book a Pick My Brain session with Sean Callanan? Go to sportsgeekhq.com/pickmybrain.
Thanks again to Jess Smith. You can follow Jessica Shazam with 2 Z's or 2 Z's for my North American friends on Twitter, as well as connect with her on LinkedIn. As she said, I will put all the links to Jessica's socials, the way you can reach out and say thank you, which I really do appreciate, in the show notes. You can always find the show notes by putting the episode number or just going to sportsgeekhq.com / in this case 316, or just go and look up Jess on the website. Before I just wrap up this episode, one of the things I have rebooted as well as the podcast has been Sports Geek News. I'd love your feedback on it. Trying a few different things. I want to know, one, if you're a subscriber, you can do so. Just go to sportsgeekhq.com. Up the top, there's a little bar there that you can fill it in. Each week, you get a link of articles that I think you should read, and some recommending some different tools. I've been playing around with a few different tools. I'm going to be recommending them in the Sports Geek News. And just a few insights in what I'm looking at, as well as a link to the latest episode of the podcast. So please check out Sports Geek News, sportsgeekhq.com/SGN. 2023, it's always the time when a lot of people are doing predictions for the year ahead, looking into the crystal ball. Well, I've looked into the Sports Geek crystal ball, and here are the 5 predictions that I want to blindly make, and I'd love your opinions on them. The first one, I've chatted a little bit about it in the last couple of podcasts and been playing with it over the past couple of months. I think, will revolutionize content production. I really think the fast content that is required in the world of sports. I think AI is going to play a part in that. We're already seeing AI play a part in creating content like video content and the like. But I think it'll actually start playing into that graphic space and getting score updates and those kind of things up faster and merging those two together. So I think that will play a big part in 2023. We'll see more tools happen in that space. I think more crypto NFT cowboys will fail. Haven't been a fan of the crypto NFT space. I think there's too many, as I said, cowboys, if I'm being kind. Shonks is a term that I might use. It might be an Australian term, but I guess you might get the understanding. I think mainly it's poor execution and not so smart contracts at the moment, both legal and technical, right? Remember, I'm a former geek. The whole idea of the blockchain technology is smart contracts, and at the moment, I've seen anything but in a lot of the execution. So I think more will fail, but the upside is we want to weed out all of those cowboys, all of those people running and rushing to grab the money, to actually start seeing the actual concept of blockchain and everything that can offer to be actually implemented correctly with a long-term view. But I think at least for the first six months, or maybe even the whole of 2023, we'll see more fall over than succeed. I think Twitter will survive, but I think it'll continue to be deprioritized in the world of sport. We're not seeing it drive a lot of traffic. We're seeing it be very niche, really work for the really avid fan, the one that really wants to follow from the couch and for live, but they're really hard to commercialize. They're not going to the website, they're not buying tickets. So I think it'll be deprioritized for other platforms that are providing better engagement and potentially better conversion from a data point of view. So I think it'll still be part of the mix, but I don't think the effort that sports teams and leagues have put into it, especially in those early years, will continue. I think it'll be pulled back a little bit when there's platforms such as TikTok and Instagram that are providing far more engagement and far more avenues to acquire that data, which leads me to my next one. Data acquisition will become a focus for your social media efforts. We're long past the follower acquisition stage and seeing how big we can get our following and then we see the levers get pulled and our reach get crunched. I think more sports should be and are starting to focus on their own data and bringing people into their CRM and having that one-on-one conversation on a platform that you own, email, SMS, and the like. And I think the last one, I think membership will be challenged further to deliver. How do you make sure that your fan feels like they belong? How do you make it more emotional? How do you make the fan feel connected? How do you make them feel like a member? How do you make them feel like they belong? We touched on a lot of that in the conversation with Jess. Membership really has to be emotional and make your fans feel like they're part of the tribe. It can't be purely transactional. Thank you very much for taking your money. Here's your ticket. Come to the stadium. Members will be demanding more because there'll be other entertainment experiences that will be delivering more. So that will be the challenge for sports. So there are some of my predictions for 2023. Until next episode, my name is Sean Callanan, and you've been listening to Sports Geek.
Need a speaker or MC at your conference or event? Contact Sean, sportsgeekhq.com/keynote. Want to help drive more revenue from your digital efforts? Book a time for a call. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/phone call. For more resources, go to sportsgeekhq.com.